All right, so we'll just, I'm happy to run through a few quick slides and try and give you the last nuts and bolts, or I just can answer questions. I know it's late in the day and I don't want to keep you here too long. So you want to just ask questions, you want me to run through this stuff? Run through it? Okay. So then don't yell at me if it gets to be past 4 o'clock, because that's when the meeting was supposed to be over. By the way, please look to the left and look to the right and see how smart that person is. Because if they're not really smart, you should have moved tables this morning. It's really quite true. Eh? I find it really intriguing that and actually I think they mentioned it about your senator that's on the head of the Ag Committee. You really want to be good, you surround yourself with good people. And it's so true. So when you're looking around the countryside, make sure you're working with the best farmers. Lots of you worried about this, right? Number one concern, this idiot from Ontario talks about 150 pounds of nitrogen. Yeah, you know, lodging is a bit of an issue. There are these plant growth regulators, and I think Martin had a report in your package on the growth regulators, that the work he's done here in Michigan. Growth regulators work, right? PGRs, plant growth regulators. In Ontario we have Cycocell. I'm not sure you have it here. We also have a product called Manipulator, which is just a generic Cycocell. You guys have Palisade. We don't have that yet. In Europe, every acre of wheat gets sprayed on average 1.5 times with a growth regulator. So that means half the acres get sprayed twice, half the acres get sprayed once. In Europe, they can spray plant growth regulators at full rate for $5 an acre. What's it cost here to use Palisade? Anybody know? Martin, what's it cost? Where'd Martin go? He's left. I think it costs 14 bucks an acre. In Ontario, to use Manipulator is going to cost me $14 an acre. You know, they work, but they're just too darn expensive. And so if you really get caught in a situation where you got to grow a crappy variety for standability, then maybe you have to look at plant growth regulators. But they do, I find really intriguing, they do not shorten the crop the way that you think they do. If they're used properly, they shorten the crop maybe 3 inches. They do not give you less straw yield. Everybody says, oh, I want the straw because I'm getting such big prices for the straw. What they do, and this graph, anyway, oh yes, so this is the graph. Stem thickness. So what they do is they shorten it up a wee little bit, but what they actually make the stem thicker, and that's why the plant stands better. What's kind of intriguing about this process is that you can actually speed your combine efficacy up with these plant growth regulators quite nicely, because if the crop is all standing really well and the stem is a little bit tougher, then it runs through the combine easier. And on average, so yeah, I talked about Manipulator, I talked about Palisade. We can put both together. The more you put on, the thicker the stem. You can often, even in the absence of lodging, when you do these plots, you can run your hand through the crop that you didn't put the growth regulator on, and it bends over pretty easily. And then you go to where you did put the growth regulator on, and you do that, and you can just feel the difference in terms of how stiff that straw is. It's really kind of cool. In terms of what do they do for yield, they give you a wee bit of a yield bump most of the time. So on average, we're picking up, I think it's 2 bushels per acre. Yeah, if they cost you 14 bucks and you got to drive through the field an extra time, she's pretty marginal. But it is something that you can consider. Realistically, we don't use them. We may start using them if they could ever get the price down. I told the beggars that brought a Manipulator into the province, if it was double digits, they wouldn't sell anything. And so now they brought it in at $14 an acre. That's double digits. So now I'm telling every grower in Ontario, don't use it. I will be right once in my career. Anyway, from our perspective, lodging, it's all about, or not all about, but it's a lot about the weather. And so you remember I talked about the optimum growing conditions for wheat, 65 and 50. So when that wheat is going just into elongation, growth stage 4, 5, that late April through to about May the 10th time frame. Watch the weather. If the weather is consistently staying around 65 days, 50-degree nights, or in that range, your standability will be better. Because during that time frame, it's determining how long the stem internode will be. If you get a bunch of 80-degree days through that time frame, your standability will go downhill, because the higher temperature means it's going to stretch those internodes longer, it's going to be taller and spindlier. So watch the weather before you decide whether or not you need a growth regulator. Nitrogen rate, timing source, all those things play with growth regulators. Variety is a huge one, and I mean, you can get that data pretty simply. It makes a big difference. Soil type, if you're farming on real heavy clay, you never have to worry about lodging, so give it, don't worry about it. You can use the plant growth regulators, but then the other things we've talked about are planting date and seeding rate. And you can do as much with seeding rate and as much with watching the temperature and timing your nitrogen and all those other things as you can do with plant growth regulators. So I think a good manager can manage lodging without having to reach for another chemical. Not that I'm against chemicals, I'm absolutely not, but I think it just is a cheaper way to go. Okay, so plant growth regulators, that brings us to about here. Had a few guys ask me about potash on wheat, and Phil asked me if I use any potash on wheat. Remember that you need potash to maintain your soil test. Don't walk out of the room saying Johnson says you never ever need potash. You need potash to maintain your soil test, but in terms of increasing yield, the best on wheat that we've ever been able to get is if you broadcast it in the spring when you put your urea on, and then we got a whopping 1.3 bushels per acre. Woohoo! It's not, I mean, it's real. It's actually statistical. We had enough trials in there that it was statistical at 1.3 bushels per acre, but it doesn't pay for much potash. You're driving over the field with urea anyway. You want to put 100 or 200 pounds of potash in the spreader per acre because you're driving over the field, or better yet, you're hiring the local agribusiness. It's really cool, eh? You hire the local agribusiness. They charge you $8 an acre to put on 300 pounds of urea per acre, and they charge you $8 an acre to put on 300 pounds of urea plus 200 pounds of potash per acre. So it costs you $0 extra, and you're going to put some on sometime. It's not a bad time to do it, but don't expect very much in terms of yield. And no, potash is not related to standability in wheat. It's simply not. Sorry, it's just not, and that's kind of intriguing as well. We do. Yeah, so excellent comment, actually. The question is, if I'm taking the straw off, am I more inclined to actually want to add more potash? And the answer is that's a maintain your soil test thing, right? There's a whack of potash in your straw. So you're going to take the straw off. Well, whatever you get for your straw, the first penny a pound buys potash. So you get 4 cents, 4 cents pretty typical for us, 4 or 5 cents a pound. You take the first cent a pound, you go to the fertilizer dealer, you buy potash, you put it back on the field. Because that's essentially I mean, there's a little bit of phosphorus, and I'm simplifying it, but that's, so yes, you want to buy more potash for sure. Is it more important to put it on at that particular point in time? I don't think so, but anyway. Okay, fall nitrogen. I get lots of people, and I know, Ohio still recommends fall nitrogen. I cannot make money out of fall nitrogen on wheat. I simply can't get it done. So, I mean, you can look at that data set. The 90 is 81 bushels, right? If I add 30 in the fall plus 90 in the spring, wow, I get 84 bushels. So that's a 3 bushel yield increase over my 90. But if I compare, because that's a total of 120, if I compare that 120 to my 120 in the spring only, well, I get 89 bushels. So put the nitrogen on in the spring. It's not an environmental concern if you put it on in the spring, or at least not as much as it is in the fall, and it just doesn't make yield in the fall. So I fight all the time, no fall nitrogen. Whatever's in the phosphorus is good, no more from that. That brings us to about here. This is the most popular ride at the Texas State Fair. We won't let it run very long, but it is kind of interesting. This is where it goes bad, right? Now it's bad. And we'll stop it there, because you can watch the whole video if you want. I mean, it's a YouTube thing. What amazes me is that those people paid good money for that experience. Like, holy crap. Yeah, one's born every year. So you guys into sulfur or not? Using sulfur? Everybody using sulfur? He's starting to? Yeah, so I'm big on sulfur. By the way, how many guys grow alfalfa? Anybody grow alfalfa? Putting sulfur on your alfalfa? Okay, because that was the one that really surprised us was, man, if you're not using sulfur on alfalfa, you are probably slipping the clutch in a big, big way. We're getting a 21% yield increase by adding sulfur on alfalfa. It's a whole nother presentation, but it's really quite important to me. Wheat needs about 9 or 10 or 12 pounds, depending on the type and the protein. We're getting about 10 pounds out of atmospheric deposition right now, so it just isn't giving us quite enough. And that's what it looks like in the field often. You can see the yellow spots. You can see my test strips there, or my little test spots where I spread a little bit of sulfur to see what would happen. On average, we need about 10 pounds of actual sulfur. Okay, so on wheat, I'm at, yes? Spring. So 10 pounds of sulfur. The reason I say spring is that you can put elemental sulfur on in the fall. Elemental sulfur is by far the cheapest source. The problem is that elemental sulfur has to go through a breakdown process. Thiobacillus breaks it down into the sulfate form. And if you get a warm, dry spring, like we got in 2012 when we were planting corn on the 21st of March, then elemental sulfur applied in the fall will release in time for the wheat crop. But wheat's demand is incredibly early. It needs it late April through into May and early June. And if you have a cold backward spring, the activity in the soil doesn't kick in soon enough. And so with wheat, I want to see it as sulfate, right? So either ammonium sulfate or ammonium thiosulfate. If you're a 28% user, it's ammonium thiosulfate. It takes about 3 gallons of ammonium thiosulfate to get your 10 pounds. If you're a dry guy, it's ammonium sulfate. It takes 40 pounds of ammonium sulfate to get 10 pounds of sulfur. That's all you need. Done deal, drive on. Okay? We'll skip that one. We're fairly short on time. Yeah, so we're a bit stuck in the mud. I get lots of questions about, someone else already asked me today, am I a streamer nozzle 28 guy or am I a urea guy? And I'm a hardcore 28 guy. And I'm a 28 guy because when I apply 28, and I'm not sure it shows up very well, but 28 on the left and urea on the right. And the 28 just kicks in quicker in the spring. And on average from our data, we get about a 2 to 3 bushel yield increase. And what's surprising is I've done this year after year after year, and it's never big, but it's a 2 to 3 bushel yield increase. Now do the math. Someone else challenged me that I wasn't giving you the economics. I don't give you economics because you know your own prices. You got to do the math. There are times when a 3 bushel yield increase will not pay for the difference between 28% and urea. And then you should buy urea. So you got to look at the economics of this stuff, but from a nitrogen standpoint, urea gives us a little more yield just because it's there more quickly and also because of this. Can you see the nice, wonderful spread job that we have in that particular wheat field? Pretty, eh? So in the spots where they missed with the nitrogen or didn't get it quite spread wide enough, there was a 35 bushel per acre yield loss. And you know what? It happens, so that happens pretty poor. It happens time and time again. And I've done a bunch of these calibration field days with agribusiness. Oh my word, those things couldn't spread fertilizer to save their soul. It's unbelievable how poor the spread pattern is. And every agribusiness, I'm going to pick on agribusiness for a minute, and you guys can come up and take your run at me later. But I've had how many, this particular field day, the agribusiness guys said to me, yes, we calibrated all these spreaders just for today. And that's about what they got. It's unbelievable. So I pulled out all the rest of those slides, but and by the way, don't tell me airflows are better, because at that particular field day, we had a single spinner spreader, we had a twin spinner spreader, and we had an airflow. And they ran the single spinner spreader first, and it was brutal. You know, you get the little graduated tubes, you put the pans out, and it was just like this. It's like, oh, this is good. So then, okay, so the single spreader, the single first, then they did the double spreader. It'll be way better. Yeah, it was way better. It went like this. And then they said, that's okay, because we got this airflow. And by the way, when we put the airflow out, we charge for the airflow. She's $11 an acre, but she does a good job. It was the worst of the three. You know, one thing about 28% and streamer nozzles is that your application uniformity is perfect. You drive a foot wide, you have a yellow strip down the field. You drive a foot narrow, you have a lodged strip down the field. Well, or maybe not, because it doesn't always lodge, but you definitely have a very dark green strip down the field. You know where you drove. And with auto steer now and sprayers, this system absolutely works. So then automatically everybody always says to me, well, what's the best sprayer or the best nozzle to do it, the best streamer nozzle? And please, don't anybody ask me if you can put 28% on with flat fan nozzles or flood jet nozzles. You want to do that, I don't know, go move to Ohio or something, because oh crap. Anyway, so I really like these chafer bars. I think they do the nicest job. I don't think there's any question about that. You can really see, I'm sorry, you can really, the new ones now actually have this little slide on them. And so you can go from about 8 gallons an acre to 40 gallons an acre with that one bar just by going click, 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 click. And that's pretty cool. If I decide this year that I want to go really early on some late planted wheat with just 10 gallons per acre, to give it a boost, you know, in another 3 weeks when the snow goes away, which is exactly, by the way, what you should do. That wheat needs a boost. And don't look at me and say, well, I don't know if it's going to make it, because frankly, I don't care. If you don't feed it, if you don't give it a boost, there's about a 2 or 3 times as much chance it won't make it. So close your eyes on late planted wheat and put 30 pounds of nitrogen on as quickly as you can, period. Just do it. And if you have to take it out in May, plant corn. Or just say, okay, so I lost that $15 an acre. I mean, it's $15 an acre. It's not the end of the world. Anyway, this is really nice because you can change that rate so easily. There is some issues with these ones, though. And the problem is that they're hung out way out there like that. They're reasonably pricey. If ever you get the stinking thing close to the fence row, she goes snap. And the other interesting thing is that if you even get close to the canopy, and I'm sorry, but you see how they're all nicely lined up in a row right now, right? It touches the canopy, and exactly, this gentleman knows, she goes like this, right? She twists sideways. And now instead of having my nice 4 streams perfectly laid out in the wheat field, now I got it like this, right? And now I got 1 stream every 20 inches. That doesn't work so well. You can solve that. It's really easy to solve. You take a rubber band and you put a rubber band from there to there on every one of those. And then when she hits the canopy, the rubber band pulls it back straight. Yeah, no, rubber bands get old and they break, and it's the other problem with these ones is when you fold the boom, right? When you fold the boom, they're always an issue. So while I love these for the job they do, they take more management. You can look at 3-stream nozzles. 3-stream nozzles, when they are 20 inches off the ground, do a perfect job. Absolutely perfect. How many people can maintain the boom at 20 inches off the ground all the time? Especially if you're going 12 miles an hour. Right? You get this. And as soon as you get this, the 3-stream nozzles are brutal. Because you got 3 streams that are going like this, and then they do this, and it's just brutal. So I used to think these were good until we actually figured out that when you drive fast and get boom wobble, the streams just don't line up anymore. So they don't work as well as I would like. Well, actually, that actually shows it. You can see the boom height's not quite right there, right? Because they are not uniformly spaced across that cement. And the other one that I sort of get lots of questions about is this 5-stream nozzle. I think they're a decent job. You notice here, and it's hard to see on those screens. I hope it's a little easier over here. So the outside streams overlap, right? They're 5-hole nozzle, but the outside nozzles are smaller. So you can see that that nozzle hole is smaller than the 3 centers. And so it's designed so the outside 2 overlap like this. So when the boom does the wobble, then my overlap doesn't throw it out as much. And there are 6 streamers. 6 streamers are essentially 3 streamers. There's 6 streamers, except that when you actually spray with them, you end up with 3 streams. So I'm a big against 6 streamers as well. 7 streamers can work okay, but then you're getting so many streams that you're starting to get more leaf burn. So I love 28%, but we don't have quite the perfect streamer nozzle figured out yet. That's another thing you can design. Yeah. At least I don't know, isn't that? How soon do you start to harvest your wheat? How soon do you start? I mean, we just had an excellent presentation from 3 millers that you guys sell to all the time, and they wanted you to grow soft, white winter wheat. And at $2 a bushel, send them to Ontario, baby, because we will grow soft, white winter wheat. It's funny, though, how whenever it's planting time, they're not offering that $2 a bushel premium. And once it's in the ground, I can't make it into soft white winter. It drives me nuts. If they want it in the ground, they have to offer the premium at planting time. If you don't believe that, I find it really amazing. In Ontario, we grow some hard red winter. You guys don't, that's fine. We grow some hard red winter. And we have a big market for hard red winter. And my growers don't want to grow it because it yields less. And one elevator system last fall said, we've got a mill that really wants this stuff. They put out a bid that was just too good to be true, and they only left it on the board for 2 weeks because they contracted so many stinking acres that they figured we better shut it off or we're going to not be able to get rid of all this stuff. You offer the price, the farmer will grow it. That's simple math, right? It's simple math. Anyway, you want to grow soft white winter wheat. This is incredibly important. Incredibly important. You go to the field with soft white winter wheat actually, I'll rephrase that. If the first time you go to the field with soft white winter wheat, you don't plug the combine, you didn't start early enough. So I mean, we have guys in Ontario that grow soft white winter wheat, and they start at 24% moisture. And they have to have a really good rotary combine, because if they don't, like I'm a proud farmer, right? I'm proud to say that I own a 1985 white model 8700 combine. Yeehaw. If I went to the field when the wheat was 24%, you know what would happen? Whoop! 2 days later, we'd have her cleaned out and back in the field. The wheat wouldn't be 24% anymore. But the guys that do this, so they're my neighbors, and they have had soft white wheat come out of the field at a falling number of 380. And everybody else that year waited, and their falling number was 200. You're going to grow soft white winter wheat. You just make sure that you're in the field the first time that wheat gets to 24%. And maybe you have to wait till 22, but you pay the drying. Because paying the drying is less painful than not making quality grain. And if you have your own on-farm dryer, it is not that hard to dry wheat. The other interesting thing is that the longer you leave it out there, every rainstorm you lose 1 pound per bushel in test weight. And you look at me and say, why is that? Or how can that be? that's just some weird, not can't be. It's actually scientifically proven. The first time the wheat dries down, the pericarp, the outside of the kernel, is smooth. And when you dump it into the cup, it's smooth so it fits nicely together. Every time it wets and dries down again, instead of being smooth, it develops microscopic wrinkles in the seed coat. And so you sort of go from having the wheat fitting together like this to the wheat fitting together like that. And so once the wheat fits together like that, the kernels are held apart by those microscopic ridges, and you have less test weight. And some years, when the wheat starts off at 57-pound test weight, you get 2 rainstorms, and now you're downgraded, and you're taking less money. Fusarium goes up. Anytime the grain is over 19%, Fusarium can increase. Fusarium grows, vomitoxin grows. So this waiting for the wheat to get to 13% moisture because you don't want to pay the drying charges, get over it. You go to the field early, you get it out of the field early, you get more yield, you get higher test weights, you get lower Fusarium, you get more money in your pocket. And if you don't like paying for drying at the elevator because those pirates are fleecing you, build your own dryer. Right? If they're really making that much money, you should get in the game. Anyway, so you're all about here. I think we'll finish up real quickly. You're all spraying Fusarium fungicides anyway, right? And my only point would be make sure you time it right, make sure you use the right nozzles. So we're very big on these backwards, forwards nozzles. Remember what the, was it Benjamin, I think, that talked about the UAVs? Yep, right? And you said that when you want to look at the head, if you shoot straight down, you can't see the head, right? You want to see the head, what do you have to do? You have to shoot this way. Well, it's no different with putting this stinking fungicide on. You have to use a nozzle that can see the head, that can shoot at it at the side. And that means that you want those nozzles essentially to be about 15 degrees off the horizontal. And so when you get to that and you shoot one forward and one back, we really like these turbo flood jets. You can run the turbo flood jets at 12 miles an hour. And so you can get lots of acres done, and they give good coverage. And I could do a whole presentation on this, but I think you're doing that. Make sure you time it right. Make sure you spray it, period. Oh yes, one last quick note on that. The other thing is on your sprayer before you go to the field, what do you have to do? Clean out the end caps. And this is one of those things that if most of the new sprayers, thankfully, are coming out with automatic, ways to just open a ball valve at the end of the on the dead head or no dead head at all or whatever. But this, by the way, is a brand new sprayer. It had sprayed exactly 100 acres of corn. Look at how much stuff is in the end caps. You spray wheat with any contamination in the sprayer at Fusarium timing when it's pollinating, and you wipe it out because you kill the pollination process, and then there is no wheat in the head. So you really have to do an excellent job, and don't forget the end caps. One other quick note on Fusarium. I expect you know this, but in 2013 we had a real Fusarium problem. In actual fact, in 2013 our Fusarium problem was almost as bad as it was in 1996. The difference was that we're growing better varieties and we're doing a better job of spraying fungicides. So instead of having 90% of our wheat not make quality, we only had about 1/3 of our wheat not make quality in roughly the same year. So growers are doing a much better job. But this is one of the things that growers just really hate to do or don't seem to believe is this whole wind speed thing. So we knew we had Fusarium. My farm, unfortunately, was in the heart of the Black Triangle in 2013, the worst Fusarium infection that we had in Ontario. And of course, I'm the idiot because I do plots on my farm all the time. And you can't do plots to learn stuff if you don't do some without fungicides. And so I had grain coming off my farm out of those plots at up to 40 parts per million vomitoxin. It's called toxic waste. But I'm a good farmer. We layered that in the bottom of the wagons. Bonus. I had a neighbor who's a way bigger farmer than I am, and much, new equipment, and he went to the field. He knew I had a Fusarium problem. I'd been talking about it. He had the same thing. He went to the field, and the brand new John Deere combine, I think it said to start to run the fan, the cleaning fan, right, at 900. Set it at 900, went to the field. First tractor trailer load off to the elevator. The freaking big combines now, they can combine so much in such a short period of time. It would take me all day with my weight 8700 to fill that stinking tractor trailer. The guy gets the elevator, calls him back and says, whoa, we got a problem here. This stuff's 10% Fusarium damaged kernels. What's he do? Oh, well, that Johnson guy says crank the wind, so he goes from 900 to 1100. Well, that's okay, except that he already has the second tractor trailer pretty well loaded. So then he sends that one off to the mill, and it means nothing because it's blended, so it was crap as well. Gets the third tractor trailer load set at wind speed of 1100 to the elevator. Well, it's only 4% Fusarium damaged kernels, which is still way over the allowable 2%, right? So it's still crap. And so then he goes to maximum wind. So by tractor trailer load number 5, he had grade 3 wheat. And all of his wheat after that was grade 2 or grade 3 wheat. Not starting with the wind speed set at maximum cost that particular grower somewhere in the range of $5,000. And it's a very simple thing. Crank your wind speed. You get less infected kernels, right? This is my white combine we did these trials with. I couldn't get her over a fan speed of 800. You can see that we still had a lot of kernels, in the sample. We still had lots of Fusarium in the sample. But every time we crank the wind, we are improving the sample of that grain. And I just cannot, tell you enough about that. You have to go to the field. Go to the field on maximum wind and turn back from there. When the first load comes in as number 1, you can turn the fan back. But don't do it the other way. We'll skip that. And then varieties have a big play in that as well. With that, I've taken enough of your time. If there's any questions, I'll answer them. If not, thank you very much. Yep. Are you putting bug spray in with the fungicide? Am I putting bug spray in with the fungicide? No. I put bug spray in if I have a problem. I was going to talk about armyworm, but I don't. We rarely have insect problems, so. Unless I have an insect problem, no, I'm not putting an insecticide in with my fungicide. Yes?
Most of your slides, not all of them, show ground rigs for spraying. You guys can get spraying with a plane?
Spraying what with a plane? Fusarium fungicide? Yeah. So remember I said that when you had this target, you had to spray this way. Right. A plane doesn't spray this way. A plane's like spraying with a flat fan. We've done those trials. So with a Fusarium fungicide, you have to use a ground rig. And by the way, boom height is 10 to 12 inches off the canopy. Not the normal 20, 10 to 12, because you're on an angle, so the distance at 10 to 12 is about the same distance as at 20 inches going straight down, and you need that spread pattern. But a plane is about half gives you half the efficacy of a ground rig in terms of Fusarium control. Leaf disease control, it works perfect, but not from a Fusarium control. Okay? Yes?
I have 2 questions. Are you ever using glyphosate as a pre-harvest?
Yeah, glyphosate as a pre-harvest burn down. I really don't like glyphosate as a pre-harvest burn down because that means you don't have red clover planted in the wheat, right? So I want red clover in all my wheat. But if you have, if you don't have red clover planted, pre-harvest glyphosate, and be very cautious with this, because this is a food crop. And if you have heads in there that are not fully mature and you translocate glyphosate into the grain, this is a bad thing, right? Glyphosate already has enough of a black eye in the public's perception. We don't want it in the grain. But what I found really intriguing is that once the grain is mature, how do you tell if it's mature, by the way? Anybody know? How do you tell? Pardon? Put it in your teeth and crunch it. If you wait that long, Lord help us, you might as well run with the combine. So it's very simple. So the head is here, and the stem right below the head is called the peduncle. You don't care about that, but so look at the stem right below the head. And when that starts to change color, goes from green to light green tan, what that tells you is this translocation has stopped. That stem tissue is dying, then you can spray glyphosate. But go to the least ripe part of the field, right, and make sure that those stems have started to change color. That happens, go spray your glyphosate. You'll harvest 2 or 3 days earlier, and you will increase your yield by a bushel or 2 per acre, because when you desiccate the crop, it goes through the combine better, it separates out easier, and you'll get a little bit more yield. But timing is really critical. Yes?
And the other question, economics do play into a lot of these decisions of what we do. And I was noticing when you were talking about MAP, I think you were talking about 100 pounds. Well, that's about 25 bucks probably. And the yield gain was about $25 worth of.
Yeah. So Gordon's excellent question or comment. He says, "Oh, come on, Johnson, get with the program. 100 pounds of MAP is $25, and you want me to put 100 pounds of MAP on my wheat crop, and I get about 4 or 5 bushels. That's $25. Why would I do that?" Well, think about this for a minute. So first off, if you don't like that economics, use 50 pounds of MAP instead of 100 pounds of MAP, because the yield difference is very small. So 50 pounds of MAP will almost do it. But the other thing is that you put on 100 pounds of MAP, you put on 52 pounds of phosphorus in that 100 pounds of MAP. You increase your yield by 5 bushels per acre. 5 bushels per acre is somewhere in the range of 3 pounds of phosphorus. So you used 3, you put on 52, you got 49 left, and you paid for the whole shot. So you've maintained your soil test, and you broke even.
I was thinking of other inputs too as well. I just wonder if you and you're on your farm and the farmers you're advising, are you cutting back on any of your inputs, or are you just doing it like as if it was wheat was still $8-9 bucks a bushel?
Yeah. So the question is on inputs, are we cutting back any, or are we doing it still like it was $8 or $9 a bushel? And my answer is sure, we cut back. I mean, we might cut back to 50 pounds of MAP instead of 100 pounds of MAP. I'm probably not going to use manipulator at $14 an acre, where I might use it if it was $8 a bushel. There's many things. You always got to look at the economics. Absolutely. So everything I put up here, for goodness sakes, I don't care who's talking, you should always take what they say with a grain of salt. And that includes me. As much as I am 172.6% right, you have to make your own decisions, okay? So you're 100% right. But in wheat, a lot of these things, they work. And so my nitrogen by fungicide thing, even at $5 wheat, it still works. It's still driving me forward. A few other things may not quite get there, but you're right. Yeah, yes?
You were talking about doing the phosphorus when you plant the wheat, and you like to put it in the ground, and then you also talk about mixing it with the wheat. Explain that to my buddy here. He's got a problem with that.
What's the problem? Sorry.
I do? Yes, you do.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
He thinks it's going to get real hard, and it ain't going to go through the drill if you mix the wheat and the phosphorus together at wheat planting time.
Yeah, we covered that, I think. The answer is no. You mix the phosphorus with the wheat seed, it doesn't go hard unless you let it get wet. You let it get wet, I'm out of the game.
What about high humidity days?
High humidity days, it's MAP. It's not urea, it's not potash. It doesn't suck moisture the way that urea and potash do. I have guys that have done this since 1988, and they're still doing it. If it was a problem, they would not be doing it. So I'm quite convinced it works. And the other answer really is, buy a V-box with a split box, put seed in one hopper, fertilizer in the other, and it just mixes, it goes up the auger, go to the field, drill it out. There's no chance for it to set up like that, right? Anything else? If not, that's great. Grow wheat.